Hello, welcome back to Space Engineers. In today's video, we're looking at another forklift, where this is a very compact forklift with very simple controls, and it's called the Heavy-Utility Industrial ForkLift Mk, which is well this lovely thing sitting right behind me. So this is a extremely compact forklift, just for a bit of fun to drive around your base. It's quite limited with how it's been set up with the arms. We can only lift them up and down, and we can extend pistons out. And that's about it, unless you fiddle with the controls yourself, or add on a programmable block to make it much more responsive. Okay, my character can bugger off just a little bit. There we go. Gonna press F10, find this in the spawn menu. So the Heavy Utility Industrial ForkLift Mk is 155 small blocks using a couple of the DLC packs. We see up here that it says, "Congrats, you're forklift certified," and there is a fun little side project the creator did, and it is just a forklift with nothing much going on with it. So we're going to give this thing a thumbs up, run towards the very front, have a quick look around the outside, then we're going to go through the controls, and then we're going to test it out on a little container, and well, other containers over there, to see what it can do. Now what I will mention is, this forklift in particular does have artificial mass on it, so it can handle a lot more than it looks like. We'll see that a bit later on. But anyway, for the very front of the forklift, what we have is a button where we can press this to manually lift up and down the forklift arms. This makes it a bit more easier to do maintenance work on this, as well as a bit more easier to get into the cockpit. With my character coming all the way up to it, pressing that button, and there we are. Just lift all the way up, the legs at the end fold all the way down to keep the correct orientation, go up stuff and clamp onto it. But now we can very easily access the side on here and get inside. Running back over to here, you can bugger off once again. There we go, and just leave them up for the moment. And well, surrounding that button, we've got a bunch of dark grey steel blocks with a bit of orange here and there. We've got 4 interior lights, 2 at the front in the yellow colouring, then we've got 2 standard ones on the left and right hand side, which are currently blinding us. Moving up slightly more, here's your flush cockpit with an unfinished panel right above that button, with a transparent LCD screen right above there. Moving on to the side, here we go, we're actually looking at it as a whole. There we are, so we see the side of our cockpit, we see a little gap right next to that cockpit where the arms are going to fold all the way down. We have a handy little green arrow pointing you towards the front of the vehicle, as well as a blue neon tube, well, acts as a handle. Maybe it's an easy way to hop up and get on top of the vehicle, if say you need to do maintenance on top. Yes, we've got an access panel on the side to open up, play around with. We've got 0.5 on each side. We see our arms themselves, which are going to be 2 hinges, piston in the middle, has skin on armored panel, with orange armored panel in front of it. And of course, our landing gear to act as our clamp to clamp onto stuff. Come out to the top a bit later, towards the back, there's a column right above that access panel, some more orange blocks. Down here below the wheels we see a reactor to give it a nice bit of power, and then we've got some barred window blocks just covering up some more blocks right behind the chair for a passenger to come along with you on your adventure. So above that we've got ourselves our cargo container, still a few bits and bobs inside. Right next to that is our artificial mass to help weigh this thing down when carrying around a heavy object. Right above that is a spare wheel, so if something does go wrong with this, you can say just attach on a new wheel, grind that up, then weld up the wheel, then you can be off on your adventure once again. Onto this side, another access panel to open up, play around with, a little conveyor cap down there, an antenna to make sure we always find it. We've got 2 LCD screens with red colouring to access your brake lights. Then all the way down to here below your chair, there's your connector to dock it up with 2 beam blocks right next to your wheel suspensions. Onto this side, there we are, we've got a weapon locker store, a few guns inside, so if you are going into a very hostile area, say you need to go into an enemy base that you think is fully disabled, and you want to just scoot in, grab the goods and run out, perhaps it's not fully disabled, and you need to actually start blasting a nearby turret, well, here you are to store your rocket launcher inside. Anyway, down there we see another reactor to give it a nice bit of power, once again our arrow, blue neon tube, 0.5 right next to our arms, then moving all the way up looking down, and there we are, so there's the top of our flush cockpit. There's the LCD screen right over there. Onto this section, a rotating light that we can activate, but it's not on the hotbar by default. Then surrounding all that, we see our conveyors, our encased conveyors, that link across towards our arms. There's a spare wheel once again. Then all the way up onto our arms. There we are, so we've got 2 LCD screens with a little warning sign on top of them. There's some orange armor panels that come up to a interior light. There's your hinge that then comes across to our landing gear. And of course, there's your landing gear at the very end. Looking at it like so. There we are. Then moving all the way down underneath this thing, here we go. So yes, there's another artificial mass towards the front of the vehicle. And of course, we can't really get any kind of light underneath here because we are under the ground. But we can see some blast edge blocks at the front. So if you do go a bit too quick when, say, trying to pick up a container on a vehicle, well, hopefully these will limit the damage this vehicle will take. But other than that, can't really see too much else to point out below here. But as it stands, it's a fantastic looking compact little forklift to play around with in your world. Yes, it's not the most efficient forklift I've ever seen, it's quite limited, quite rudimentary, but for what it is and the size of it, it is a bit of fun to play around with. So grab and hold my character coming all the way up to it, hopping inside, what I'm going to do is put them all the way down and then hop inside, there we go. And this is what we get in the cockpit view. So looking up and around, we actually have a fairly good view all the way around this thing. Then looking all the way down, not too much to talk about there. Anyway, bringing up the HUD, the only two controls we get on this by default is number 1 and number 2. I added number 4 myself, because otherwise there wouldn't be a way to disconnect those landing gear. So coming to a third person view, putting the camera like so, pressing number 1, well what this is going to do is do exactly what that button on the front did, and lift up our arms, and of course angle down our landing gear. So all the way up they go, and there we are. The number 2 is going to be to extend out our pistons. And that's all it does. So yes, it just moves it all the way up, help you get a bit more reach, help you, well, move it all the way up to a higher platform if needed, but that's about it. Of course, pull that all the way down, move that all the way down as well, and that's it for the controls. There's absolutely nothing else with this, so if you do want to customize it a bit more, if you want to have a bit more fine control, you will have to come to the G menu, find the groupings, I'll just add it down to the hotbar and set up a few things with that. I am just going to use the default settings, with of course the landing gear, lock and lock I added on myself. So now what I'm going to do is come all the way up to this container before I drive it around and actually play around with it. So here we come, we're going to come up to this one on the ground, very carefully now, although we don't need to be too careful because we do have the blast edge blocks below the vehicle to act as bump guards. So here we come all the way up to it, clamping onto it, now I can lift it all the way up, first person view, watching it go all the way up, now I can extend all the way out if needed, turning it around, it has not affected the vehicle's maneuverability at all. Now I can just drive this around, get it to where it needs to go, drop it off, then go off on my Avenger. Yes, it is quite a twitchy vehicle, so you've got to be quite careful with that. Now I'm going to come up to this, drop off there, I'm just going to retract that, put it back down to the ground. Now I'm going to move across to the other containers, the small large container, before we go and try the large block container sitting right next to it. So all the way up to this, clamping onto it, there we go, lifting it up, and once again, no issues whatsoever. These are empty, and of course that will change quite dramatically when you fill them up. Now I'm going to come around, bump into that, and I think I might just leave it on the doorstep of this building. So all the way up, go, send it across, and I think that'll do quite nicely. So dropping that down there, now I just have to do. Now we'll come across to the large cargo container before I try filling it up to see if we can lift it before moving on to the next demonstration, which will be pulling off a cargo vehicle. So up to this one, here we go, onto the bottom, and I actually want to try and make sure both legs are clamped onto this. Moving away, lining up slightly better. There we are. Now we can lift it up. How's the vehicle handling this? And surprisingly, it's doing quite well with that. I have a feeling if I extend out the pistons, it will tip over. Here we go. And that's actually really impressive for this tiny vehicle. Of course, any kind of weight in there is going to change that quite dramatically. But no, this thing can lift up an empty large block cargo container. So there is that. So what we'll do is drive around just a little bit. We're going to come around the corner of this building. First person view. We actually have a fairly good clearance below this thing, but got to be quite careful when stopping. It seems to be having a bit of issues when tilting forwards, when stopping quite suddenly. So we come forwards once again. Turning it a little bit. Having a little bit of issues turning around with this thing. But nonetheless, it is still very impressive. So I'm going to drop off there. And now I'm going to fill it up. So here we go. Before we move on to the next test, coming to the large cargo container, I filled up with a bunch of cobalt ore, because that's nice and heavy. Hopping into this, I doubt it's going to be able to move this thing. So all the way up to it, both the legs clamped onto it, and... well, yes, I can't really move this thing, can't really pull it around. What will happen though if I retract pistons is I'll be pulled all the way up and towards the cargo container. So yes, there's quite a limit on what this thing can handle. But like I said, it's quite impressive with what I can handle at the end of the day. But anyway, coming all the way up to this, we're now going to pull this off this vehicle. And then we'll go and drive around for a bit to see how it handles properly while empty. And then that'll be that for this video. So all the way up to this, it's going to be quite awkward without having defined controls for actually moving it up and down to where I need to have it. So what I've got to do is be quite careful and quite rapid while pressing number 1 and number 2. So I want to pull this out, move this down, clamp onto it, pull it up, pull that back. And there we are, I've now taken it off the cargo rickshaw. and I can take it back to wherever it needs to go. And once again, I'll just drive around this building. In fact, we'll go around this building for once. So around we go, and I think I'll deposit it next to this ladder. Slamming on the brakes, dropping that down, and that is that, what this vehicle has to offer. So yes, at the end of the day, it's just a fun little thing to play around with in your world. And the only thing left to do with this thing is, of course, to drive around at high speed, see how it handles, and then that'll be that for this video. So here we go, driving in a straight line, first person view, 25 meters per second, 30, now we're going up against 40, almost 45, can I reach 50? It is getting a little bit shaky, it does not have a gyroscope on here to actually maneuver it around, so any kind of jumps is going to be lethal for this thing. There we are, 45, can I get to 50? It looks like it is struggling to reach 50, that's not going to be too good, that looks like a cliff ahead of me, or it could just be a small little lump. No, there we go, we're now just tumbling around. Of course, this will not break, because for whatever reason, block destruction is turned off in this world. And there we go, it somehow self-righted itself, so I'm just going to continue along. But no, what I want to do is now come to a stop. Here we go, we're now going to turn this thing around. And that's the turning radius we get, so it's very, very sharp for this tiny little vehicle. Possibly one of the sharpest turning traditional vehicles I've ever showcased. That's absolutely fantastic. And because we're on a slight hill, that's even more impressive that it doesn't just flip itself over. As for that, that's pretty much it for this vehicle. What it has to offer, what you can do with it, just a fantastic looking one. Very small, very compact, and a lot of fun to play around with. Plus, there's a lot of way to upgrade this thing if you do want to make it a lot more usable in survival mode. Like say, adding on programmable blocks so you can have fine control over the arms, actually have mouse control over the arms, and of course, adding a gyroscope onto this will be a fantastic thing. So if you do a dodgy jump, like I just did right there, you can realign this thing, hopefully minimize damage. But anyway, there'll be a link to a description below to which you can play around yourself. Highly recommend you do, because it's a fantastic little thing. And well, I'll be back with another video somewhere soon. Bye bye.